So if the camera is wiggling, that's probably my dog. Welcome to A Mountain Book Garden. I'm Liz. For these past 2 weeks, I've traveled around the world and off-world a bit. I visited Hindu Heavens, Cambodia, Washington, D.C., Austria, the border of Moldova and Ukraine, and my own classroom, all while setting everything up for teacher workdays. This video's books are Three Flames, Star Daughter, Under One Roof, It Takes All Kinds of Minds, and The Kingdom of Back. So let's jump in for some reviews. So the first book that I read this week is Three Flames by Alan Lightman. I listened to it on Libby. I typed in 3 into Libby to see if there was anything I could listen to while organizing my classroom, and this popped up as a relatively short read. I actually ended up listening to it in a day of work. So a little synopsis. We're following a Cambodian family set between 1973, just before the Cambodian genocide by the Khmer Rouge, until 2015. It's this one family, and their stories are intricately braided. They each get a chapter. You're seeing the struggles of a farming family against the extreme patriarchal attitudes of their society and their cruel and dictatorial father. It's also set in a rural community that is slowly being exposed to the modern world and its values. A mother must fight against her memories of her father's death at the hands of the Khmer Rouge and her powerful desire for revenge. A daughter is married off at 16 to a wandering husband and his domineering aunt. Another daughter is sent to the city to work in the factories and settle her father's gambling debt. A son dreams of marrying the most beautiful girl in the village and escaping the life of a farmer. And the youngest daughter bravely challenges her father so she can stay in school and strive for a better future. What I really loved was that we got to know each member of the family. I also loved the descriptions of everyday farmer life in Cambodia. It was hard to hear some of the patriarchal bullshit that happened to the daughters, but ultimately it was a story of hope. What I didn't like was I sort of got the ick when I realized the female characters were written by a white male American astrophysicist who happened to have lived in Cambodia. He started a foundation to support Cambodian women leaders called the HRCYED Foundation. And it took a bit of an internet rabbit hole to figure out if the women affected by his organization appreciated the book or had any dissenting opinions, especially publicly. And what I found was that the overwhelming consensus among the HRCYED community was that Lightman's 15 years of listening to them had actually paid off. They appreciated that he did not write from a perspective of pity, but rather highlighted their immense resilience, agency, and capacity for leadership. And I think they really appreciated that the youngest daughter stood up to the father to continue her education, which is a huge goal of the HRCYED Foundation. Who might enjoy this book? Anyone who's interested in history from that region of the world, anyone who is interested in rural life around the world, anyone who's looking for a shorter story. It's a very direct and precisely written story. Once I realized that Lightman was a scientist, it made a lot of sense. It was still fiction, but it was very clearly stated what was happening. I used it for numerical titles. Like I said, I just typed in 3 because I was looking for something that was kind of short to listen to during a work day where I was organizing, and I ended up rating it 3.5 stars. The next book I read was Star Daughter, and I listened to it again on Libby. The little synopsis is, if the night sky holds many secrets, it holds Shveta Mystery's secret to the closest. A secret that explains why her hair is the silver of starlight, or why some nights the stars call Shveta by name. Stars, like her mother, who returned to her place in the constellation Pushya years ago. Since that day, Shveta has been forced to hide while she's on Earth. As her 17th birthday draws near, the pull from the sky is growing stronger and stronger. It's so strong that Shveta loses control, and a flare of star fire burns her human father, an injury that only a full star's blood can heal. Shveta has no choice but to answer the star song and ascend to the sky. But her celestial family has summoned her for a reason, to act as a human champion in a competition to decide the next ruling house of heaven. The competition is focused on art, with the stars as muses. Desperate to save her father, Shveta agrees, but nothing could prepare Shveta to face the stars' dark history, or the forces that are working to shut the gate between the realms for good. I really like the competition section of this book, and I wish that it had taken up more of the book's real estate. It's hard to find a book that represents muses and arts competitions, and this did it really well. It was just short. I'm not a huge fan of reading about teen angst, which I've said over and over again, and this book had a lot of that slowed down the pacing of the middle of the story. If the author had chosen to focus more on the competition and rather than Sheetal sorting out life, I think I would have enjoyed it more. And I think there would have been plenty of opportunity in the competition setting to still explore growth or transformation, but through the experience of art. Folks who might enjoy this book, I think this is a great book for anyone who would like to experience more of Hindu culture. I have minimal experience with Hindu culture and mythology, and so this was a great start for me, and I'm really curious to find more stories from that region of the world. It's very readable. Absolutely encouraged me to look more into mythology in general from around the world. For my HRCYED categories, I'm using familial terms and remix because Sheetal is a modern teen in New Jersey who is also a star from Hindu legend. And some of it is set in New Jersey, so if you need states, this is a good one for that as well. I gave it 4 stars because it introduced me to a new set of mythology and stories that I'm interested in finding out more about. I knew going into it I was going to be reading about a teen, so I assumed I would just not love the part where she goes through angst, and that's really what happened. The next book that I read was Under One Roof, and I listened to it. Mara, Sadie, and Hannah are friends first and scientists always. Though their fields of study might take them to different corners of the world, they can all agree on this universal truth. When it comes to love and science, opposites attract and rivals make you burn. As an environmental engineer, Mara knows all about the delicate nature of ecosystems, and they require balance, leaving the thermostat alone and not stealing someone else's food. And other rules, Liam, her detestable big oil lawyer of a roommate, knows nothing about. Okay, she is technically the interloper, and Liam was already entrenched in his aunt's house like some glowering, grumpy giant when Mara moved in, and he has some big muscles and a kissable mouth just sitting there on the couch, tempting respectable scientists to the dark side. But Helena was her mentor, and Mara's not about to move out and give up on inheritance without a fight. The problem is, living with someone means getting to know them really well, and the more Mara finds out about Liam, the harder it is to loathe him, and the easier it is to love him. This was another quick and fun listen. It hit on some issues that women scientists face in a male-dominated field. There wasn't anything that I didn't really like. It was just a very fluffy, enjoyable beach read. It's a very good palate cleanser. HRCYED categories. There, I used it for numerical counting, Under One Roof, and Choose Your Party, Wizard, because Mara is an academic. I gave it 3 stars. It didn't rock my world, but as a palate cleanser, and it's fun, 4 stars. The next book that I read is It Takes All Kinds of Minds. I read it on paperback. It was a very fast read with a highlighter and taking notes because I had to read it for work. This book is a book of case studies from the UK that researchers compiled for neurodivergence in education. I anticipate this book will be a reference on my teaching shelf for a long time, and I keep recommending it to professors that I know that are training pre-service teachers. There were a few studies that directly related to UK education laws, so that wasn't relevant to me in the US. However, it was easy to assess what would be helpful because each chapter had a list of key points and reflection to help readers pause and think about what would be useful in their practice. Folks in education who did not have this information shared in their teacher training program would really benefit from this book. It was just published in December 2025, so the material and the research is current. And I haven't seen a book like this in recent memory that really expresses what is happening currently in classrooms and ways to deal with the vast, wide variety of neurodivergence you might have in your classroom from year to year. I ended up using it for the HRCYED categories curriculum because I really did have to read it for work, and cover art because it really does have a super fun pattern. And I gave it 5 stars because of how relevant it is to my particular teaching situation. The next book that I wrote was The Kingdom of Back, and I listened to it on Libby. A little synopsis about this book. Born with a gift for music, Nan Mozart has one wish, to be remembered forever. But even as she delights audience with her masterful playing, she has little hope she'll ever become an acclaimed composer she longs to be. She is a young woman in 18th century Europe, and that means composing is forbidden to her. She will perform only until she reaches a marriageable age, and her tyrannical father has made that very clear. As Nannerl's hope grows dimmer with each passing year, the talents of her beloved younger brother, Wolfgang, only seem to shine brighter. His brilliance begins to eclipse her own until one day a mysterious stranger, Hyacinth, from a magical land, appears with an irresistible offer. He has the power to make her wish come true, but his help may cost her everything. This is from author Marie Lu, and it's a lush lyrical story of music, magic, and the unbreakable bond between brother and sister. I really like this book. For those of you who don't have any kind of music history background, here's some kind of background information that you should definitely know. Nannerl is a real person. She really is Mozart's sister. They were the only two living children of their parents. They had other siblings that didn't make it past infancy. None of Nannerl's manuscripts survived. She was a prodigy in her own right until the age of 17, when it was no longer acceptable. She married at 33, and she was eventually widowed. She played and taught for the majority of her life and contributed to the biographies of her brother. The author's note at the end mentioned that the inspiration for the book was a little note in some research about Mozart that indicated he and Nannerl created the Kingdom of Back as a fantasy land to bide their time on long carriage rides during performance tours. Marie Lu took this snippet and created a whole story about the kingdom. The book also includes a lot of real life events in Mozart family's life, and since the book is narrated from Nannerl's point of view, certain liberties were surely taken to fill in the storyline. None of Nannerl's correspondence or compositions survived. There's some correspondence that was sent to her that survived, and a few diary entries as well, but nothing that she wrote survived. At about 60%, I double checked a few times to see if I was close to the story being done. So there was a little bit of dragging in the middle, and I was listening and doing organizing at the same time. So that might have been part of it. Folks who enjoy Mozart's music, folks who love a good story about women composers would really enjoy this book. I was really surprised. It was written in 2020, and I'm shocked that I didn't hear about it until maybe last year sometime. I've mentioned it to other classical music friends, and none of them had heard of it either. I put it in the HRCYED category's pocket monster for Hyacinth the Fairy, who is the antagonist of the book, and I'm kind of reserving the second category. I need to update my spreadsheet in a way where I can have like to be determined what category to use it for, or if there's an eventual side quest that I can use these second things as, because there's a few that are kind of coming up that have this same issue. I rated it 4 stars, mostly because in the middle, the story felt like it was finishing as I was listening to it. And then I would check and there would still be multiple hours left on the book, even though I was reading it 2 times speed. That was the only thing that I had trouble with. I think I would read it again in a hard copy. And actually a coworker who is an avid reader, I had told her about HRCYED, and she brought me some books to read for the various categories we kind of talked through. And this was one of the books, and I happened to be starting to listen to it that day. So I do, and it's a signed copy. I'm really excited. So I do intend to read it with my eyeballs at some point, a couple of years, just to see if that makes a difference with the speed of the story. But I recommend it for sure. The next book that I read in the past 2 weeks was The Sisters of the Winter Wood, and this I actually got as a hardback from the library. I went to go pick up, let's see, Legendary Fry Bread Drive-In. I had to like renew this, so this was a while ago. And I went back to see if there were any Rebecca Ross books, because she is kind of localish to my region. And so I was curious if we had either Divine Rivals or the second one. And they didn't, but they had this, who the author is Reena Rossner. All right, so a little synopsis. Raised in a small village surrounded by vast forests, Liba and Leia have lived a peaceful, sheltered life, even if they've heard of troubling times for Jews elsewhere. When their parents travel to visit their dying grandfather, the sisters are left behind in their home in the woods on the edge of a town. Before they leave, Liba discovers the secret that their Tati can transform into a bear and their mommy into a swan. And perhaps, Liba realizes, the old fairy tales are true. She must guard the secret carefully, even from her beloved sister. Soon, a troop of mysterious men appear in town, and Leia falls under their spell, despite their mother's warning to be wary of strangers. And these are not the only dangers lurking in the woods. The sisters will need each other if they are to become women they need to be, and save their people from the dark forces that draw closer. I really love that I found another set of fairy tales that were retold in this 2 weeks. In this case, they're on the border of Moldova and Ukraine, And at the start of the book, because the parents can change into a bear and a swan, I wasn't sure if the reference town was real. But then I looked it up and it really was there, and the river was there. And the thing that I loved the most about this book, and I keep telling everyone this is just such a great way to write a book, was that Liba's chapters were all in prose and Leia's chapters were all in poetry. Liba is the one who inherits bear-like qualities from her dad, and Leia inherits the swan-like qualities from their mom, and they share a very, very deep sibling love, even with their very perceived differences. And another thing I loved about this book is the author provided a note in the back telling us where all the inspiration came from. So she knew she wanted to do a retelling of The Goblin Market from 1862. It's a famous narrative poem by English writer Christina Rossetti, and it tells the story of two sisters, Laura and Lizzie, who are tempted by magical animal-like goblin merchants selling forbidden orchard fruits. Laura trades a lock of her golden hair for the fruit and falls into a severe addiction and begins to waste away. Lizzie rescues her through a courageous sacrifice, emphasizing the power of sisterhood. The author also incorporates other myths from the region regarding bears and swans, which are really popular characters in literature, art, and ballet from that area. And finally, there's a bit of historical fiction as well, because she includes the pogroms of the late 19th and early 20th century as a backdrop for Leia and Liba's experiences as Jewish teenagers in this region. I ended up actually reading the original Goblin Market as a Pokemon for Poison. I forgot how much, in reading that, I forgot how much I really enjoy poetry and how the words can be so lyrical. And that makes way more sense why she had Leia's portion be written in this long, epic poetry style, while Liba's is in prose. Also, as I was reading the poem, I had like this burst of memory from high school. I took a semester-long poetry class in senior year, and I really, really enjoyed a lot of the poetry we read. And we had a field trip to someone's house, and this was the burst of memory that I had. I can't remember who it was. It wasn't a teacher, because she had just recently gotten out of college, and this was like an established person's house with a home library office, which to a teenager just was really cool. And so maybe it was one of her professors, because I think she went to the local university near where I grew up. And so I need to reach out to some high school friends and see if they can fill in any details, because a lot of us who are still in contact took that class together. But I kind of wonder if we read this poem back then, or if it seems very familiar, and I'm not sure if it's just the kind of fairy tale that seems familiar, or if it's something that actually came up in a class. In terms of some things that I didn't like in the Sisters of the Winter Wood, there's some very predictable moments and turns. And yes, I know it's a YA book, and that doesn't always mean everything has to be so obvious. But for me, that will knock off a star, like, every time. People who might enjoy this book, I think anyone who loves ballet or art from this region, folks who are interested in Jewish history and migration from that area of the world, and then folks who understand sisterly love. I think folks who enjoy poetry would really enjoy this combination of poetry and prose and how they play off of each other. I ended up using it for familiar terms for sister, and then I ended up using it for birthday month because it was published in September. And I gave it a star rating of 4. What I really liked about these past 2 weeks of reading is the number of fairy tales that I hit on, and that they were from really different places. We had some Hindu culture. We had culture in Cambodia. There were no fairy tales in that book, but I did appreciate that it was a very different society structure. Ukraine and Moldova. The Goblin Market poem that I read by Christina Rossetti was very British in its structure and setting, I think, but also magical because of the poetry and the lyrical use of language. It was just a really interesting reading 2 weeks. I think it was slow at the beginning, and then I sped up and kind of like consumed a lot of stuff. So what's coming up next? I'm going to try to finish reading Empire of the Vampire. I tried to read it for book club last year, and I didn't finish it in the 2-week time that Libby gave it to me, and I couldn't renew it because people were waiting. After book club, and I heard everyone's opinions about it, I think it just started too slow for me, and it was long, and I wasn't in a fast reading zone that I am now. So I just got it back from Libby, so I'm going to see if Kindle hopefully saved where I was, and I can kind of like catch up on where I was, and then read through as fast as possible. I have a couple of arcs from NetGalley that I need to finish up. I need to find something to listen to for a drive on Monday. I'll probably read a little bit of Empire of the Vampire on Monday as well. I won't be driving, so I can do either. I also want to finish The Frozen Witch for the side quests. And then I have a friend's book that I won't review for a long while because she's really early in the publishing process, but that is also on my list of things I'm going to read in the next 2 weeks. So far, my HRCYED stats are I've done 23 books since late June, because that's when I decided to start HRCYED just because of my own personal scheduling and try to get as much reading done before school starts as possible. I have one category completely done. I have a couple of categories that could be done pretty quickly if I Hold on. I must move my dog because he will not stop contributing to this vlog. And I'm like 3 sentences away from the end. This is the dog who likes to talk. Okay, let's find out what he needs. I've read 23 books. I finished one category, a couple of categories that could be finished really quickly if I prioritize them, and a lot of categories that are not even close to being done. So, before my dog comes and voices his opinion about everything, anything and everything, thank you for visiting me this week. Have a wonderful week. Oh, look, a puppy! Up or something. Hello, this is my puppy. He would like to have opinions about books as well. His name is Wendell. He's an old man. He can't see. He apparently just wanted to snuggle. Did you hear the word snuggle? He's sometimes deaf too. It's very selective, but it's been selective his whole life. Very selective his whole life. Okay, Wendell, are we done? You're going to take some more snoozles? Okay. Well, have not. Neither has my dog. 60%. My dog is coughing up a lung. Oh, and we might hear my dog because he's now coming to walk towards the camera. We'll see if he makes a impromptu visit. All right, so if the camera is wiggling, that's probably my dog.